Morning, everyone. I apologize for a few minutes late start. We were having some technical difficulties. I think those are resolved now. So we will call the meeting of the Del Mar College Board of Regents to order at 10:34 a.m. This is a workshop that's called meeting that is being held by video and teleconference. Because of our continuing safety issues related to the COVID-19 coronavirus, we are conducting this meeting via video and teleconference in accordance with guidance from the offices of the Governor and Attorney General. Members of the public have been given access to this meeting by going online or listening to an audio of the meeting by a toll-free number. And at this point in time, we will establish a quorum by voice. So I'm going to ask each of the regents to unmute yourselves, and when I call your name, please say here or present. We do not expect Regent Rivas today. We do have Dr. Adami?
I am here.
Sure. Do we have Regent Salinas?
I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Do we have Dr. Sherwood?
I'm here.
Thank you. Regent Bennett?
I'm here.
Regent Averett?
Here.
And Regent Estrada?
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum and can conduct business. As we start our meeting today with a moment of silence, I would like to ask you all to keep in your thoughts and prayers members of our Del Mar family who have suffered with the coronavirus, and we have recently lost several individuals, including the chair of our math department, and especially Regent Rivas as he battles with the coronavirus. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers during this moment of silence. Thank you all. Please join me in the Pledge to Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would join me in the Del Mar College vision statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Again, this meeting is being live streamed with audio and video from our from the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting as may be considered closed statute. The public was given the opportunity to provide comment prior to the meeting, and it's my understanding that no public comment was received. Is that correct, Dr. Escamilla?
Correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We will begin this meeting with some discussion around our final workshop for our maintenance and operation budget and our debt service budget. And I'd like to ask Dr. Escamilla to please introduce those topics.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regents, today's workshop is largely around a budget that is being developed under very different circumstances than we were ever expecting, as you all know. And as such, there are some things that we're going to embed in this presentation, specifically around the risk reserve fund and some other things that we're asking for your input on and advice, so that as we move forward and are in the final stages of development of the 2020-21 budget, we're seeking your input and your feedback. We do have still several weeks in front of us to finalize that budget, but again, along the way, we will be looking for your candor and and perception as to how we've come to this point. Again, just notables for the development of this budget, given the pandemic crisis and all the impacts that we've experienced over the big impact that we've received over that crisis over the past few months has been there's a profound effect. And I would just like to say, and you'll hear me say this more throughout the month as we complete this budget, is that what we're experiencing this fiscal year is one thing, and we are doing everything we can to prepare ourselves for the next 3 years, 2 years especially. The next 24 months is how we're framing this, but truly it's going to be the next biennium that begins next year this time. So that being said, Mr. Garcia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Again, I've just mentioned the notables that are impacting our budget this year, that have opened up the discussions on financial stabilization, our plans, and those sorts of things. So with that being said, would you please kick off today's conversation?
Yes, thank you for the opening remarks, Mr. President. Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. President, members of the board. Today's workshop presentation has two components. We will first start with the Risk Reserve Fund presentation, followed by the 2020-2021 budget presentation. Please note the presentations are very similar to the presentations made in our last meeting with minor changes. We will point them out for you throughout the process. So let's get started on the next slide. Okay. The college's long-term risk management financial plan provides for a 5 to 7 million risk reserve fund that is sufficient and flexible enough to support the mission of the college throughout a crisis. The funds will also help with maintaining steady and modest tuition increase and minimize student shock relating to tuition increases that was experienced following the 2008 recession. Lastly, the fund will satisfy the bond rating agency's expectations regarding the college's financial flexibility. Before I transition to the financial resource risk on the next slide, do you have any questions on this slide? Very well, moving on.
Mr. Garcia, excuse
Yes,
me,
ma'am.
but we're only seeing a portion of your slide. That's better. I don't know what the issue was. Are you correcting that? Are you seeing that?
I am deferring this to our technical support folks.
All right. Miss Jessica's working on that. So just keep in mind that part of the frame is getting cut off. So just.
Okay. Jessica, I'm wondering if maybe the other presentation would work best. Just open it up a little bit more. Not the other presentation. I'm sorry. There you go. Maybe that works a little bit better. If you scroll down a little bit, there you go. I think that looks better. Let's work with this. Okay. If you can move it up a little bit, I don't know if they can see the bottom piece of it. Okay. So I will continue. It's not that bad. Okay. Okay, on this slide, the college has recently completed a financial resource risk assessment that could potentially erode the college's liquidity levels during a crisis. This slide includes examples of the crisis that may occur over the next 5 years, with hurricanes being the more prevalent in our area. The Risk Reserve Fund will minimize liquidity risk by making funding available for costs associated with the crisis without compromising the funding for our strategic-driven operating activities. The college has already taken measures to scale back spending in the current year that will yield a surplus that is currently trending at $6 million. This surplus will be transferred to the risk reserve account at the end of the fiscal year. Before I transition to the financial resource risks on the next slide, do you have any questions on this slide?
Just a comment, Mr. Garcia. Again, Regents, as we're going through this, Jessica, can you pull it up so that the objectives are still shown? There's a critical piece on this first slide that needs to be. Regents, again, we're going over and spending some time on this risk management, risk reserve fund to exemplify that, demonstrate the goals that we're going to be able to hopefully accomplish and use to stabilize us and to prepare for what's an imminent, what is seemingly an imminent downturn in the economy and otherwise statewide budget cuts. I just want to remind everybody that for this fiscal year coming up, that the governor has excluded community colleges from the 5% state supported cuts for all state supported institutions, rather. So I just want to use that as a kind of a kickoff note. We're in good stead. Where the state government is, the leadership of the state government is looking to us and looking for us to, us being the 50 community colleges, to work to stabilize the economy in the future. These are very, very important steps and actions of support and confidence in the community colleges. That being said, please proceed, Mr. Garcia.
Okay, thank you very much. So, okay, so Jessica, I'm going to ask you, on this presentation, there's the header right next to the design ideas, way at the right. Click on that little arrow, and that should move things up a little bit. Thank you very much. There you go, perfect. Okay, so we are now on the financial resource risk on page 3. Thank you so much. Nope, I think we completed that one. So now we are on the next slide, please. Thank you so much. Okay. As previously mentioned, this year's surplus will be transferred to the risk reserve fund account. Therefore, transfers from the reserve fund for costs associated with the crisis will be made on an annual basis. In addition, the financial statements to the board will be redesigned to report the risk reserve fund account balance for transparency. With respect to the board policy, Tammy McDonald will lead us into this discussion on the next slide, assuming there are no questions. Okay, moving right along. Thank you.
Good morning. What role I worked on for the policies, we took our current policy, the B5.1.1, which talked about cash reserves, and we kept that intact. I split it, that current policy into two different sections, and then added the A, B, and C. So the proposed revision is the current policy, and it was just divided into a different section. We went ahead and added under the A, which, like I said, is straight out of the current policy. So anything in red is new. Anything in any other color is current policy language. So it's the red that's the new addition to the proposed revision. And again, this is a discussion. This is not for action today. We want to make sure that we get your input. So this is for discussion, so that when we do bring the policy back, then we have taken your input and discussion today to move forward. So we spelled out in the letter A that the board directive for that is the contingency fund, which has always been that way. We just labeled it because that's what we do call it. And then if you move into letter B, this is what we currently do in practice, and we refer to the plant fund, but we went ahead and formalized it into the policy. So this is our current practice, and what we have in the past practices used this particular plant fund for. So you'll see that that's spelled out in the ways of transferring money in or out of the plant fund, and who has the transfer authority. Again, that is what we currently have in practice. And then if you'll see, C is in addition to where the board is directing the CEO to create and maintain a risk fund. So this is the new fund that Mr. Garcia has been and Dr. Escamilla have been speaking about the last several meetings. And it will function along lines of the same operational as the plant fund, but it will be used for different purposes. So if you can read through there, it's create and maintain a risk fund reserve that will provide financial flexibility to support the mission of the college throughout a financial crisis. Funding will be used for catastrophic loss deductibles, uninsured losses, emergent needs for health and safety occurrences, supplemental operational needs due to loss of or reduction in funding source as a result of a national state emergency declaration or economic downturn. Transfer authority from this fund is delegated to the CEO. The CEO will notify the board of any transfers made into or out of this fund. So we would like to if you have any input, any suggestions, please feel free.
Are there questions from the board? Any comments? Mr. Bennett, I see your mic off.
I do have a question. On item B, it says deferred maintenance. Is that specifically for deferred maintenance or just any kind of maintenance?
So this would be specifically for deferred maintenance. In addition to what's already budgeted in our normal M&O budget, I think as we transition into the next slide, you will see that historically the college has already budgeted for repairs and maintenance. And this year we're looking at 1.4 million. So this is on top of that amount. Yes, sir. So it could be a combination of those three things, depending on what the priorities are of the college.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to suggest that maybe there should be a comma after maintenance there, deferred maintenance, comma, furniture, comma, fixture and equipment.
Oh, yes, thank
Yes,
you.
So the first, so there are regular content. I'm sorry, are there any other regents that have questions? I have a couple. Ms. Estrada, Dr. Adami, do either of you have any questions? Hearing none.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, please.
No. I don't have any questions at this point.
Thank you. So we have designation in our 3-month operating funds. We have designation for the contingency fund, but we don't have a designation on B or C for the plant fund or the risk fund as to how those will be, how funds get added to those two areas. So I realize we don't want to be too restrictive in the policy because it's going to ebb and flow, but do we want to have targets, or do we want to have where those monies come from that will fund those two additional contingency funds?
So that's a very, very good question, Madam Chair. I think today's presentation, we're looking for a $5 to $7 million funding for C. And excuse me. And so the question that's a challenge or becomes a challenge is what is the appropriate level of funding that we can fund these B and C. At the same token, how do we continue to manage moving forward the current resources that are available for our operations? And so this can continue to be an ongoing discussion. And so for now, a good starting point that we're presenting today is the $5 to $7 million reserve for the risk fund. And maybe in the coming months, we can continue to have discussions on how to fund the plant fund moving forward. We do already have funding in the plant fund, and that's already been designated, as you will see in the next presentation, for software and some FF&E for the Southside campus. To your point, Madam Chair, is how do we replenish those resources to fund the other components under the plant fund? And I think that's something that I would probably need to discuss with Mark and see what he's thinking along those lines.
May I?
Let me jump in right now real quick. Excuse me, Tammy, real quick. So I can answer that, and it's going to be very different this year than next, especially on C. C is being created out of obviously out of a pandemic and other exigent circumstances that have just fell upon us late this spring. And so as such, those dollars are being derived from existing budgets, from freezing of accounts and consolidated positions, and all the things that I've described in the financial stabilization plan that we've been employing over the past few months. And I think it'll go for it as on a go for it basis. I think that both B and C will be better we'll have a year behind us to see how those dollars are replenished, if at all. You know, depending on the circumstances from year to year. Excuse me. And usually B comes after the budget is already established and those sorts of things. So there's an ongoing discussion. It's kind of in that gray zone of, and really these dollars for the plant fund are really contingent upon the closeout of business come September 1. And so there's ongoing discussions that go into the fall semester. When we start looking at the dollars, usually when we do our quarterly reports in the middle of fall is when these dollars are discussed. I think both will be in that category. Again, C is different. So from a timing standpoint, there will be full discussions, and you can be assured that I and the team will bring these discussions back to the board to understand clearly where every dollar is coming from. That being said, there's two different. The nature of the three A, B, and C are very different, and I think that's what we're trying to understand how they all work. And again, this year is going to be very different than next year.
I guess I'm wondering if because A, the contingency fund is a current fiscal year fund.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
The statement potentially could be under A, where we make an addition that at the end of the fiscal year, after the audit is complete, the contingency fund excess is transferred into the plant fund and the risk fund at the board's direction or something like that by board action. Does that make sense?
So the contingency fund in A, though, is very different. That one is it would have to be a different time to make that shift, because the contingency is really an educational contingency fund is really what that is.
But it's a current operating year fund.
Yes.
It's not a balance sheet fund. It's a current operating.
Yes, ma'am. And that one's very different from B and C, and that we're able to, just by way of the percentage we budget that on the front end.
But I'm saying once the fiscal year is complete and the audit is complete, whatever. Because right now, where does that contingency fund is not tapped during the operating year?
Yes. It goes into risk reserve.
It goes into risk reserve.
I'm sorry. Take that back. It goes to the unrestricted reserves. It goes into the big bucket.
Okay.
Okay. And unless necessary, we do not move it into the plant fund. But typically, those dollars go into the unrestricted reserves. That's the intent of those dollars right there.
Gotcha.
And so those are kind of a steady stream of about 1.5% that does continue to add into that bucket over there. We try to keep the plant fund specifically dollars that carry over, that are outside those dollars, that are operational dollars that carry over. And so those are the distinctions between A and B. C, again, very different. These are under exigent circumstances that we're freezing dollars and doing those kinds of things that we really don't like to do, but we have to do to get through. So I hope that answered your question. I went into a couple different areas.
Well, probably, again, I don't know that, I don't disagree with the establishment of plans and the clarification here. I just think we probably need to have some future discussions about how we maintain the balances necessary in those funds.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And that's a very good one too. That's a good point, because in plant fund, we depend on that plant fund for a lot of things, and we've done amazing things with the plant fund, and those have just been through regular ebbs and flows of the budget every year to year. Those have just been dollars that we've held on to and carried over from year to year from previous budget years. And so we're going to have to. I see what you're saying. There's still lots of opportunity for discussion and for the description of all really 4 contingency buckets that we have, not just A, B, and C.
And then my last question, then I'll open it back up for any other Regent comments or questions. Are we going to see these on our balance sheets then in the next fiscal year, where we have a separate line item for our risk reserve fund on the balance sheet?
Yes, ma'am. That is the vision that all the financial reports that we report back to the board on the balance sheet, we will separate the risk reserve fund. So you will always know at any point in time on that report what is the remaining balance or current balance of the risk reserve fund. And so John Johnson and I have already talked about this, and he will be taking the lead in redesigning the balance sheet report presentation to the board.
And the plant fund as well?
The plant fund, I definitely need to have a discussion with John. I don't foresee it being an issue, but we can definitely work it out that it's included in there. Absolutely.
Okay. Those were my questions. Mr. Bennett, I see you have your microphone open again.
I do. Just for my clarification, when we close out the year, we have a surplus. Where is that surplus transferred?
Are we talking about historically, current, or moving forward?
Let's say current.
Okay, in the current year, we have already taken initiatives to scale back spending in order to come up with the dollars for this reserve. And I think we had started off the conversation a couple of weeks ago of estimating the surplus somewhere between 5 to 7 million. I talked to John a couple of days ago, and we looked at the numbers, and it's currently trending at $6 million as of last week. So that'll be a good starting point. We haven't closed our books, by the way, and so when we close our books, we'll have a more definitive number. But it's definitely trending what we originally estimated.
And where's that transferred to? Does that go into the unrestricted funds and then we transfer it into the restricted funds?
So from a GAAP reporting perspective, from a board reporting perspective, none of these dollars are considered restrictive from a GASB perspective. However, it is considered management restricted. So when you call it management restricted, it's all unrestricted, period. It's only when it's restricted by, just for a simplification, whenever it's restricted by an outside third party, then that's when it's considered restricted. For example, financial aid. For example, the CARES Act funding. Those are externally agency-driven restricted.
Okay, so I guess just to clarify, when we close the books out, we've got a $6 million surplus. That is put into another fund, and then the board allocates that. Is that correct?
By mere of this policy, that designation is given to the CEO, who will authorize the accounting office to transfer the general unrestricted pot dollars into the risk reserve fund, i.e. unrestricted, second pot of dollars.
Okay, I'm clear. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Sherwood, a few minutes ago, you had your mic open. You have a question?
No, I don't. I'm having technology issues here. So my iPad decided to come on all of a sudden, unbeknownst to me. So that's what was happening.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from Regents? And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact Dr. Escamilla. We will see this as an action item later on this month, but wanted to present it to you today so that we had an opportunity to see the specific policy changes that staff is recommending.
Okay, if there are any...
Move on.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will now transition into the budget presentation, please.
And Regents, as we're doing that, these two action items that we will take action on today after the presentation, we will actually have orders to conduct our public hearing and an order to on the budget and a separate order to conduct the public hearing on the tax rate. So we're going to hear the presentation first, and then we will go to those action items.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will now transition to the budget presentation. If you can hit that top corner arrow up there as well, just to make sure we get full view of the presentation. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, please. Tammy, thank you very much for your help in the presentation and the risk management piece. Okay, so here we go. The college has completed the final 2021 budget plan proposal based on the best available information. The difference with this year's budget plan is that we are planning around a two-pronged crisis, which includes COVID-19 and the recession. In addition, there continues to be uncertainty on how long the crisis will last and the response and the possibility of another catastrophic loss in the near future, i.e. Hannah is a good example we just went through. As mentioned in the previous staff report, the Risk Reserve Fund will provide the college with the financial stability during the period of uncertainty. So let's get started with the planned resource allocation to strategic-driven operation activities. Dr. West will lead us into this discussion on the next slide.
Good morning, everyone.
Kathy, can I just say one thing real quick?
Sure.
Just really quickly. The whole setup of this presentation, Regents, that Dr. West is going to describe, it being a strategic plan, delineated and associated kind of presentation, those are the kinds of things that have assisted us in doing so well with our accreditation. Living by the plan, showing evidence of living and operating by the plan. Those are not those are not just details for us, Regents, and I know y'all have an appreciation for it because that's what we've been living by. But I just want you to know that that has paid off in big ways for the college. I just had another meeting with our vice president of SACS on Friday morning last week, and it was another exuberantly positive meeting because we're living like this. These are very critical things. These are very important processes that we continue to live by, and it's what's giving us what I'm calling the gold standard from SACS in the way of reaffirmation. I just have to add that we're doing things right, and I just have to comment on that. Thank you.
Next slide, please, Dr. West. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We presented this slide in the last budget workshop, so I'm just going to summarize the high points of the slide. But we're very proud of the fact that, we are refining our budget process. And in FY 2020, the budget team began working with Dr. Christina Wilson's team to improve the college's resource allocation process to ensure that there are adequate resources to support the strategic initiatives of the college. So the new budget requests for 2020 budget were required to be tied to the strategic plan initiatives to goals 1, 2, 4, and 5. So this slide shows the continued funding of the FY 2020 requests. Then we tied the 2021 budget increases, which we didn't have a whole lot of those because remember we were going to stay flat in our budget. So we had increases to support goal 4, learning environment, with increases to employee compensation, insurance premiums, and electricity. And then for goal 5, workforce development, community partnerships, and advocacy, we have the $160,000 for the board election year. Next slide. And then this slide shows what, we were just talking about, the plant reserve funds, which again, they're in a different bucket, but they still are there to support our strategic plan initiatives. And so what I did here was show the total that was estimated that we would spend for the new ERP system for goal 3. And then for goal 4, right now, our estimate for South Campus FF&E is $9.85 million. I believe that's.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. West. We're ready for our next slide. Okay. So our last item for this part of the presentation is the Risk Reserve Fund, which is linked to our goal of financial effectiveness and affordability. The college's long-term risk management financial plans to establish $5 to $7 million risk reserve fund that is sufficient and flexible enough to support the mission of the college throughout a crisis. The funds will also help with reducing student shock relating to tuition increases that was experienced following the 2008 recession. It will help with maintaining a steady and modest tuition increase throughout the next 5 years. Lastly, the fund will satisfy the credit agencies, or actually our bond rating agencies' expectations regarding the college's financial flexibility. If there are no questions on these slides, John Johnson will lead us into the next slide relating to revenue assumptions. Thank you.
I don't see any questions. I think we continue.
Yeah, thank you. John, I'm wondering if you have your mic on?
Yeah, I just fixed that up. I apologize. I'll be presenting the assumptions used in compiling the revenue data. As you'll recall, the board approved a $2 modest increase per semester hour for the upcoming fiscal year. Due to the current corona pandemic, it was decided to keep enrollment projections flat and keep total tuition revenue at the current level. Tax assumptions included the following. The college continued to budget for no increase in property tax revenue for the prior year for the current year in an effort to lessen the tax burden during the crisis. During the current economic uncertainty, this college reduced the property tax collection rate by 1.5% to approximately 95%, which follows the downturn felt in years 2008 and 2009. The college was able to maintain the same amount of budgeted revenue for the M&O tax revenues, but using revenues generated revenues generated from the new capital additions of 851 added to the tax rolls. This allowed the college to collect to reduce its M&O tax rate by 0.6 of a penny. Debt service tax increased by 1.4% due to the issuance of the 2020 A and B voter approved bonds. Of course, state revenues and are anticipated to remain the same due to next year being the second year of the current biennium, and as a result, the government excluded the community college for the state's request for a 5% reduction in funding for the next year. And of course, in order to lessen the tax burden on the taxpayer, the chairs, deans, and senior leadership have been working diligently to scale back operating costs.
Thank you, John. Next slide.
Okay, just above it. Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Estrada. Can
Yes,
I
ma'am.
ask a question, please? Yes, going back to the tuition increase that we approved, the $2. Tell me again, did I understand correctly? We're not doing the $2 tuition increase? Is that what I understood, or because of the coronavirus?
No, we are definitely doing the $2 increase for this next fiscal year. We didn't show a gain in revenue tuition because we've had some fluctuations between both the academic tuition and contract instruction. So we wanted, although normally this would show an increase of, let's say, $400,000 to $600,000 in additional revenues for the $2 increase, we didn't feel like it was a good time to budget that in the case that any of those revenue areas, whether it be academic or contract construction, might have a decrease in enrollment.
And so thank you again. In that sense, we're being very conservative in our tuition revenue figures. Yes, there is a $2 increase. There is the expectation that enrollment may go up based on historical trends, but for now, we're going to take a more conservative view or outlook in our budget plan moving for this budget year. So thank you, John.
Let me make a comment there, Raul, if
Yes.
I may. I'm sure. Regents, again, what you see in our development of our budget is using the rules and the playbook that we've learned over the years. And that is that when the economy goes down, the credit enrollment goes on credit, or this continuing education does the opposite. Now, we've had anomalies in those trends and stuff, but we're going back to a very conservative approach, with the expectation in our minds that one of the instructional streams, if you will decline. Now, if they don't, we're in great shape. But history has shown us that one goes down, one goes up. So one compensates for the other, and we're looking at developing a budget that is flat for that from that side, and one basically compensates for the other. Now, we have seen where they're both up. Okay, that's been the trend, and we've got our fingers crossed there. But for the sake of being conservative and going into the budget, the credit will probably go up in that scenario, and the continuing education will probably level out or go down. So again, these are just lessons learned over the years. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Question. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we will continue on to the next slide. John will continue his presentation on this next slide as well.
Well, as you can see from this next slide, there is no increase in any specific line item that are really our three areas of the budget: state appropriations, insurance, retirement, tuition and fees, and property taxes. When we looked at property taxes, we had long discussions of keeping property taxes at the same level this year. So when we went into the assumptions for this year's current M&O, the current revenue taxes, what I did was due to the economic uncertainties, the college reduced the property tax collection rate really by almost 1.5% to approximate a 95% collection level, which follows the downturn felt in 2008 and 2009. The college was able to maintain the same amount of budgeted M&O tax revenue using the current revenue generated from new capital additions of 851 added to the tax rolls. This allowed the collect to reduce its M&O tax by 0.6 of a penny. Debt service tax increased by 1.4% due to the issuance of the 2020 A and B voter approved bonds. State revenues are anticipated to remain the same during this next fiscal year, even though the governor asked for a 5% reduction in appropriated revenues, of which community college were excluded. So we're very happy for that. Of course, miscellaneous revenues, we kept it the same. We have been over revenue in those areas for a couple of years, so we felt like we could maintain the $13 million in that item and still be able to maintain that level of revenue. Therefore, we would keep the same total M&O budgeted revenue the same as the prior year.
So thank you, Jen, for going over the assumptions. At the end of the day, we are looking for a flat level budget relative to last year in our revenues. If there are no other questions, Jan can continue on to his presentation of the next slide.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
I understand the assumptions, and I actually agree with them. I like your conservative approach.
I don't know what you mean by, hey Siri, and I actually
Hang on.
agree with him. How about a web search for it?
I think Siri
Okay.
kicked in.
I found this on the web for Hayes.
So, I'm sorry. These are assumptions, and we have dates that will know the validity of these assumptions, like the enrollment. When will we know the enrollment is flat, up, or down? Is it the beginning of the semester, or is it 12 days into the semester?
There's a certified date. I'll take this one, Mr. Garcia. So, but that would be the fall semester enrollment. So when we're talking about the big budget, I want to remind everybody that we're talking about an enrollment that includes the current summer. Okay, we're looking at the summer, fall, and spring enrollments all the way into 2021. So there's that big picture. Specifically, semester by semester, you're talking about the official day of census, which is the 12th class day. Okay, that's when they take the snapshot, okay, for that particular semester. And then they also, as you know, for fall, they include a late summer enrollment piece and so forth. So we will have a snapshot. We will have two different snapshots, technically three different snapshots by October of this year. Once we get it all certified and bring it back to you, we will have a snapshot of summer one, well, all of summer, including the flex, which is counted into fall, and fall. Okay. Now, and so up to that point, we'll have several different snapshots. That's not the complete, because there's still late fall, second 8 weeks, and so forth that we'll be pushing into spring, and then certainly take a snapshot of the spring semester. So I know that's a little bit more detail, but those are the several different snapshots that will comprise the snapshot for consideration, not for automatic funding, because we're going into the legislative session, for the legislature to account for and to fund. Of course, there's lots of little nuances there as well with success points and things.
Okay, and I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, does that help? I mean, is that?
That helps, but my concern is we're dealing with projections here, and because of the variables that we've got out there with the economy and the virus, we need to know, I believe the board needs to know as quickly as possible how accurate our forecast is, because if we come in way under on the projected enrollment, we might have to make some adjustments.
Yes, and understand.
And I do agree with the assumptions, but as soon as we can find out how close those assumptions are to reality, I think the board needs to be made aware of it.
Understood, well, and we're glad to bring those back. Hang on, Ron. And so we're glad to bring those back even before October. We can show you trends and those kinds of things. And we can show you, using summer, how we've used summer to project and understand the behaviors of our students given the circumstances that we're all facing together in this community and so forth. So we can bring those more readily and have those and have a more current update, albeit incomplete and not certified and those kinds of things. We can show you the trend leading up to those dates, is what I'm saying.
I think that would be very valuable. And another component that I'm concerned about is that tax collection. And we don't know what it's going to be, but we will know in the first week or so of February, I believe. And it would be very beneficial for the board to know if our 1.5% addition to the uncollectible taxes is at that point a reasonable assumption.
Yes, understood. And as a reminder, again, this is why we're putting together that risk reserve fund in case of those anomalies, in case of those anomalies to get us through the completion of next year and the year after that, the year after that. So that's the whole basis for those kinds of, for that whole account right there, is to account and to be prepared to make recommendations to the Board of Regents should those anomalies count. But duly noted, Mr. Bennett, we will keep you more closely apprised of the trends and the practices in our students as they enroll for this fall semester. I know our team is, as we speak, or upstairs in this very building, working away student by student in that regard. So duly noted. Madam Chair, if that's the board's pleasure, we'll be glad to come back with a more regular update on what's happening with our enrollment.
I think it's a great idea. So on our pending list, I know that Delia has listed. Ms. Pettis, if you will put on the pending list in February to have a report from the tax collector's office on that percentage, so we've got an update. And then given that this budget starts September 1, a September and again early October enrollment report would still be early enough in the fiscal year that if there are major variables from your assumptions, we could know that again within the first 2 months of the fiscal year and potentially make adjustments there as well. So I think, Mr. Bennett, I think you're right to ask us to look to test those assumptions as we go during the fiscal year. And so making note of those two things I think is important. Ms.
Well,
Faber,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, Raul and John, I've got that noted. Let's read through, put our heads together on timeline of those updates.
I'm sorry, Mark, there was some interruption there. Can you repeat, please?
So I'm just responding to our chair's request and the regent's request to make more timely the updates of all the assumptions as they play out.
Absolutely.
So let's get together with the
That shouldn't be a problem.
Ms. Avert has a question.
Yeah, more of a statement. I would just add that I very much appreciate the conservative nature of these numbers. My fear is that they aren't conservative enough because while it's good that we have some past experience with the previous recession of what we may be able to expect, I think the times that we're in right now are completely unpredictable. So I am encouraged to hear that you do have, some other plans in your back pockets where we can make some additional cuts if we need to, should the year turn out to be worse than we anticipate. So I know it's not easy. I appreciate all of the hard work in trying to make sure that we have a successful year in these very challenging times. So thank you for your hard work on that.
Thank you.
Any other regent questions or comments? Yes, sir. Dr. Escobar.
Thank you. Regent Everett, is, to your point, the difficulty with these circumstances are when the economies and the resources slow down,
enrollments go up and our overhead goes up, and so there's always the challenge. And
in the community colleges, especially as they come back to reestablish themselves. So that contradiction, that inverse relationship, is what is what's making. I think is where you're coming from, and just know that is duly noted, fully appreciated. Thank you for those comments.
I don't see any other comments. Please proceed, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, thank you. So moving on to the next slide, John will continue with this presentation. Excuse me. John, if you will, I believe your mic may be off.
I apologize again. When we look at the tax rates over the last 5 fiscal years, we can look at that our debt service rate has fluctuated. M&O rate has fluctuated somewhat. Our debt service rate, of course, for the due issue during year 21 has increased significantly, and we understand that. But for year 21 and going after year 21, our tax rate will slowly begin to fall. And in fact, I ran some numbers. Our debt service rate going to through year 20 up to year 27, our debt rate, annual debt rate falls from about 23 million down to 16. And when we get to that year 27, our tax rate should drop our debt service tax rate should drop by approximately 3 cents. Of course, that's good in the fact that it gives us additional flexibility in our M&O rate to adjust for, any new costs of instruction or overhead or anything of that nature. So to me, it puts us in a good position. I think people just have to realize that year 21 is going to be the highest tax rate that we should see, barring any huge downturn in the economy. Which I think there'll be somewhat of a downturn in the economy, but I don't foresee it dropping by that amount.
So thank you, John. I also want to pause for a moment to thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. President, members of the board, for your responsiveness to what is currently the lowest interest rate environment that the college has experienced in years. The timing of the 2020 bond issuance could not have been any better. The total interest cost rate for the 2020 bond issues relative to the 2018 bond issues resulted in a financing cost savings of $1.2 million for the first year and, $17.8 million for the life of the bond issues. This $17.8 million financing cost savings will go a long way with reducing the taxpayers' burden, as John just described. There are no any other questions on this slide. Jackie will lead us into the planned expense budget on the next slide.
I do want to make one last comment. I apologize. I do want to commend your staff all the way down to instructors, department chairs, your deans, your administrative and support staff for coming in with an M&O budget at 0.6% lower than what it has been in the past. That is incredible. I think you have risen to the challenge that not only the governor stated specifically, but that your board expects from you in these trying times to create that maintenance and operations budget flat and to lower the tax rate. And I realize our overall rate is increasing, but the M&O tax decrease, I think, is significant, and I want to applaud you all in your work and your belt tightening and pencil sharpening and everything else that you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Regents, I would just add, that the 28 cents still remains, although there's on the right side of the decimal, as you drive in, look further deeper into the amount, there is a very small incremental increase, and that increase demonstrates the selling of all bonds from both 14 and 16 general obligation bonds. And so as a result, we're peaking still at under what we had projected. And that's been, again, as Mr. Garcia said, a sign of the times, and I'm going to say creating our own good fortune here at the college. So, and as Mr. Johnson said, as you start looking forward, that debt service starts winding down. That is an ideal place. That is an ideal place to be. It just says we're doing all the right things, pushing in all the right places, and moving swiftly and with the accuracy. The acumen of the team is to be commended from the business side, Mr. Raul and his team. And again, Madam Chair, thank you for acknowledging the cuts that and the sacrifices that the college has been making from all levels, from way down, like I like to say, way down on the bottom where the president's office is, all the way up to the top of the people that are in the trenches in those classrooms and in service areas. And so thanks to the entire college. This is no small matter. Thank you so much.
Yes, as the old African proverb says, it takes a village. So thank you for those kind words. Moving on to the next slide. Jackie, if you will, please.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Good morning, everyone. I will now go over the budget. We have not made any changes to the slides since our last meeting. And as the college is focused on lessening the tax burden during this crisis, we reallocated a little over 2.2 million of our budget to fund mission critical costs. These mission critical costs include election expense, increased insurance, and building these burning buildings.
Can you stop?
Categories that have, yes, ma'am.
You're cutting in and out. I'm not sure if it's an audio issue or your broadband, but you're cutting in and out.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'll start over then. We haven't made any changes since our last meeting. We are focused on lessening the tax burden during the crisis. We reallocated $1 billion of our budget. The costs include election expense.
I'm going to ask you to stop again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Jackie, hold off. Roll for the sake of continuity in the audio. Can you take up for Jackie because she's having those
Yes,
audio?
absolutely. So essentially, this slide has not changed at all whatsoever from our last presentation. As Jackie pointed out in our last presentation, there were some cutbacks, about $2 million that were redistributed to mission critical areas. And what you see here on the increase decrease column of this presentation, you will see those adjustments, and you will also take note that the increases are again driven by the mission critical activities like the ones described by Kathy earlier on in the presentation. Moving on to the next slide. At the end of the day, next slide, please. At the end of the day, we still have a balanced budget of 107.8.9 rounded relative to our revenue stream. The net impact reclassification shuffle between salary and non-salary is $964,000. Do we have any questions on this slide?
One question.
Yes, sir.
I've noticed campus police on the last 3 budgets or so, and my question is, I don't know the answer to it, so I need to ask the question. Do we have a certified police force now?
I'll take that one, Roll.
Okay.
No, sir. And we're going to have an update at the end of this year, although those dollars have been set aside and we've been working towards that end. Mr. Bennett, it has taken longer than we've expected. I have a team reassembled to lead us to that end in a shorter time frame as these next 3 months. And so, although those dollars have been allocated and some have been used for personnel and some level of equipment, we are still waiting for TCOL certification and for the full certification of our police department. I've given our team a much shorter timeline for the completion of this, and you'll have a report as soon as October and November when we start talking about clarity on the next and hopefully final stages of that development.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then I'm going to ask Tammy McDonald to transition us into the next slide presentation on compensation.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Here's our proposed employee compensation. If you look at the first category for full-time faculty, we are proposing that the experience pay at $829 per year of experience is awarded or is approved for the salary increase, which will be approximately county benefits $292,800. Though the approved rank promotions, those are already approved by policy. The CO has the authority to approve those, but we wanted to show you that it does establish that there are extra dollars going into faculty salaries because of approved promotions and rank. And then I also show you the impact to summer pay based off of the promotions and then the experience pay increase. So a faculty total counting benefits would be $505,284. Then we're also proposing a 1% salary increase to exempt staff full-time and 1% salary increase to full-time non-exempt staff. And those two together are $245,464 for a total of salary increases to all employees of $750,748. That number does include the benefits associated with those increases. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Appreciate it. Next item is the future revenue and expense assumptions. John and Jackie will co-present on this next slide. Next one, please. Thank you.
Well, of course, this is John. Going forward, the revenue assumptions, of course, there's been some discussion, and we anticipate having a risk reserve right now, somewhere between 5 and 7. It's looking like it's somewhere around $6 million under tuition and fees going forward. We talked about a $2 tuition rate increase for each year. And we're going to keep enrollment growth projections flat until we see a change in both the economy and what's going on with the current pandemic. Currently, over the next 5 years, we're going to keep our collection rate at 75% until we see the economy turn around. And as has been consistent in the past, we'll be using a 3% increase in net taxable value for each year. During the fiscal years 22 and 23, we will be including a 10% decrease in state appropriations. And in years 24 and 25, we anticipate a 5% increase in state appropriations. Are there any questions?
Jackie, if you will, on the expense side.
Okay, can everybody hear me better now?
Yes.
So on the expenses, we did include a 2% salary increase each of the years for the full-time faculty, exempt and non-exempt employees. However, this is preliminary and may change in the coming years based on the best available information. On the non-salary categories, we are anticipating an increase of 2% in most of the categories each year. Utilities, we are anticipating a 4.6% increase, and supplies and library costs are averaging about 5% increase each year. Lastly, the college is expecting a reduced energy cost by $125,000 for fiscal year 2021 and $500,000 for each of the following years due to a newly negotiated contract. Are there any questions on this? Okay, then I'll ask Mr. Garcia to continue.
Yes, thank you, Jackie, and thank you, John. Moving on to the next slide, please. Okay, so there are three key takeaways on this slide. One is the tax burden will begin to spiral downward, resulting in a 10% reduction in the total tax rate by fiscal year 2025. This reduced tax burden is attributed in part to maturing general obligations in fiscal year 2023 and 2025, valued at $54 million. This is only the beginning. The next deleveraging will occur in fiscal year 2028 with the maturity of the 2016 revenue bonds valued at $15.1 million. The grand total of these maturities is $69 million by fiscal year 2028. Another key takeaway is that there will be steady increases in expenses with financial resource allocation to fund mission-critical operating activities moving forward. Operating expenses will be monitored and adjusted throughout the year. So we'll take a look in the month of November, probably each quarter, but John and I will look at it every month just to make sure that things are trending relatively well to the budget. So any adverse effects on the finances will be adjusted or planned for immediately. In addition, the risk reserve fund will also be leveraged to manage unforeseeable adverse financial conditions. Lastly, the 2021 property tax for an average taxable homestead value at $172,000 is $478 per year, and it will scale down to $390 by fiscal year 2025 due to this deleveraging that I just spoke about. This represents an 18% savings for the homeowner. Before I transition to the plan calendar, our last slide, are there any questions?
Yes, sir. I have a question on your M&O tax rate under FY 2022. You have it at 0.21314. Is that correct assumption?
John, if you will address the question, please.
Yes, that is what we were using in that particular fiscal year. We still had a large increase in a significant increase in our we had a increase in our debt service requirement, but because we had some additional costs occurring in year 22, we felt like, and with the cutbacks in state appropriations, we felt like we would have to increase that tax rate in year 22.
Again, Madam Chair, that is a projection. Obviously, that's looking into the future as we prepare. I think this to going back to what Regent Favorite was talking about earlier. It's going to be rocky times, but I also think, and I've talked to the team about this, is that again with the risk reserve in place, we may be able to manage that more and be a little tighter on that. I think that if we use the risk reserve fund to keep that overall rate trending down, right, and not necessarily peaking. Again, still early, very early. That's why we're going to monitor this. Go into this next academic year with a very different mindset as we watch the budget.
Right. And I had to, in order to work with a balanced budget, I had to take into consideration that our projections were for a 10% decrease in state appropriations.
Okay. I just wanted to test that assumption, but when I looked at that, that obviously stands out as kind of a big swing in FY22 if necessary.
I had a question on that. In 2022, don't we increase the amount that we spend on the Southside campus as well?
So on Raul, do you want to take? I've got a comment too. Let me let you answer first, Raul, and then I'll back you up.
So if we transition into the next slide, it'll show you what the dollars look like. There we go. So there you go. So Mr. Bennett, the third to the last bottom line, you have the Southside campus. So yes, the variables that we just went over in terms of the property taxes are already built into this 5-year forecast dollar-wise. So to answer your question, the answer is yes, there is an increase in fiscal years, starting with fiscal year 2022 throughout to 2025.
So that would account for some of that increase in the M&O budget.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so sorry for getting ahead of, we can go back to the previous slide if there's any other questions, or we can continue on with this slide.
This is Mary Sherwood. I have a question. The numbers for the average that you read out are different than what is on the slide. least that's the way I heard it. Can you explain that?
On the values of the property, the fiscal year is on the bottom, I'm thinking is what you're referring to. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so let me see what I put out there. Give me a second. Yes, you're absolutely right. So the 2021, I have 478 versus 496. John, Jackie, can you please help me out on this one? Which is the correct number? Is it the 496 or the 478?
I'm gonna have to go. I know had to go back and adjust these because the original information that we sent you all was based on a tax value of average taxable homestead value of 150,000. And when I went back and started looking at some of these slides, I realized that it wasn't calculated on the 172. Now, I don't know if these have the updated figures on this particular slide.
Okay.
But I will double check those and get those out.
Yes, I do apologize. In the midst of the information changing, I think we may have, there's definitely a need to revisit these numbers once again. I do have another presentation on the 25th. We will definitely update these figures to have better information for you. I do apologize for that. Are there any other questions?
Well, that does coincide with slide 7, 496.
Okay, so I think the number may have been a combination of two things. It was driven by the homestead value of 150,000 rather than the 172 that's presented on this slide. And there may have been some slight changes to the M&O rate as we got better information. So we'll definitely have better information in our next presentation on the 25th. Okay. Next slide. So we just went all through the various assumptions. John and Tammy went over the revenue assumptions, and Jackie, I'm sorry, went over the expense assumptions. And this is what the financial outlook looks like. Our expenses are relative steady growing with an emphasis and focus on allocating resources to the mission critical items. Our projections for revenues, again, are very conservative. With the possibility that there may be some state funding reductions and changes to our property tax collection rate. Are there any questions on this slide? Very well. Moving on to the next slide. Okay. So let's go over our budget timeline and process. There is one additional change on this slide for the month of August. So if we go on to the next slide, this change is in line with last year's revision of the Texas property tax code revisions that go into effect this year. The next budget and tax board meeting is planned for, or has changed from the 17th to Tuesday, the 25th. Has been changed from the 17th to Tuesday, the 25th. On this day, the college will hold public hearings that will allow the public to present their views on property taxes and the budget. Thereafter, action items will be presented to the board for consideration that includes adopting the M&O and debt service budget, adopting the tax rates, and adopting the coming year's tax exemptions. There are no other questions. This concludes the budget update presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia and team, for all of your hard work. Regents, are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, we will actually now move into our agenda item number 2, which is the discussion and possible action related to the adoption of the order to conduct a public hearing on the 2020-2021 college budget. Going to ask Mr. Rivera. The actual order was presented to you in your packet. Mr. Rivera, do we need to read that order aloud?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Please do so.
Regents, you have before you an order to conduct a public hearing on the 2021 college budget. The order is entitled Budget 2020-2021. Be it ordered by the Board of Regents of the Del Mar College District that for the purpose of adoption of a budget for the 2021 fiscal year, the board schedule and conduct a meeting and public hearing on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 at 11 a.m. via video and/or teleconference at the ISNC Boardroom, Harvin Center, Del Mar College, East Campus, Baldwin and Ayers Street, Corpus Christi, Nueces County, Texas. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic crisis, this meeting and public hearing will be conducted in accordance with guidance from the offices of the Governor and Attorney General and the provisions of sections 551.122 and 551.127 of the Texas Government Code and other open meeting requirements that have not been suspended by order of the Governor. Be it further ordered that proper publication and notice of such meetings and public hearings be given as required by law. There is a section that allows to record the roll call vote, Madam Chair, as well as the appropriate signatures for yourself and the Secretary of the Board.
Thank you. Is there a reason willing to make the motion to the order of this public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Averett.
Second. Mary.
Dr. Sherwood makes the second. Regents, are there any comments or questions on this action item? So again, this is the action to place the order to conduct a public hearing on the budget. I'm going to do a roll call vote. So I'm going to ask the regents to unmute your microphones, and I'll do this in alphabetical order. Dr. Adami?
Yes.
Ms. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Salinas?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sherwood?
Yes.
And I'm Regent Scott, and I vote yes. So we have a unanimous vote to order to conduct that public hearing. Action item number 3 is the order to conduct a public hearing on the tax rate. Mr. Rivera?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Again, this is presented in your packet to board members, and it's the order that's entitled Tax Rate 2020-2021, and it reads as follows. Be it ordered by the Board of Regents of the Del Mar College District that the board consider a proposal to increase total tax revenues from properties on the roll in 2019 by 6.32%, and that the board schedule and conduct a meeting and public hearing on such proposal to consider such tax increases on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 at 11:30 a.m. via video and/or teleconference at the ISNC Boardroom, Harvin Center, Del Mar College, East Campus, Baldwin and Ayers Street, Corpus Christi, Nueces County, Texas. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic crisis, this meeting and public hearing will be conducted in accordance with guidance from the offices of the Governor and Attorney General and the provision of sections 551.122 and 551.127 of the Texas Government Code and other open meeting requirements that have not been suspended by order of the Governor. Be it further ordered that proper publication and notice of such meetings and public hearings be given as required by law. Again, there is a section that allows for the recording of the roll call vote, as well as signatures for the chair and secretary of the board.
Thank you, Regents. Is there a motion to adopt this order?
I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Estrada. Second?
I'll second. This is Libby.
Thank you, Ms. Averett. And any questions or comments from board members on this motion? Hearing none, we'll do again a roll call vote in alphabetical order. Dr. Adami?
Yes.
Ms. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Estrada?
Yes.
Mr. Salinas?
Yes.
Dr. Sherwood?
Yes.
And this is Carol Scott. I vote yes. Again, that motion passes unanimously. Regents, thank you very much for your time today. We do not have closed session today. We do just want to remind you of our regular board meeting Tuesday, August 11th, and then of our final the actual budget hearings and final adoption of the budget on August 25th. Is there anything else, Dr. Escamilla, that you need to notify us of for calendar purposes?
No, ma'am, nothing.
Thank you. Regents, again, thank you for your time. Appreciate your willingness to work through all these technology issues, which we will continue to do as we continue to meet our way. And with that, our meeting is adjourned at 11:59 a.m.